I think the word public relations, you have to separate both words, and the meaning of the word, or the meaning of the term, is based on both those two words, publics. And for any particular entity, a corporation, an individual, whatever we're talking about, their publics are as wide and varied as as they want to talk with, or more importantly today, hear from. And obviously the word relations, it is really all about your relatability and your desire to relate to people. And in what I do with corporations, the absolute critical nature of developing relationships with people. And that includes, often more than not these days, developing relationships with organizations or people who may not necessarily agree with what it is that the company may be doing, or how they may be doing it. Most corporations today realize that it's just simply not good enough for them to communicate on their terms in what is a traditional platform of corporate communications, shareholder reports, brochures, advertising, those kinds of things. But most corporations really have to get in and do that thing I was just talking about, develop relationships, put great emphasis on that, whether it's at the local community level or with certain kinds of constituencies that have an interest in what they do. But I think the biggest change that I have seen, along with the technology, and maybe they feed one another, but the biggest change I've seen is just in the behavior of corporations relative to their communities and their publics again. But it's also coming the other way. I see communities and different kinds of groups working very hard to make their opinions and their positions known with corporations, with greater expectation that the corporation is going to be responsive. And that I think is a real sea change from where I first started. Part of what I've figured out in the last couple of years, and perhaps others in the profession have figured it out long before I did, but in the past we used to really try to look for big themes, and we tried to address the big themes of things that people were bringing at us. Now we recognize that it can be the smallest, most seemingly insignificant piece of commentary that the public is bringing to us that we absolutely positively must respond to, need to pay attention to, not just because those are issues that could negatively impact the company's reputation or business strategies, but because the people in our communities matter. What they have to say matters. What we as corporations, or what my clients do as corporations, say and do, and their behavior affects right down to the individual person. So it becomes incumbent upon us now to be a lot more respectful and responsive to those, to the individual as well as the large groups of people who are having something to say about us. I know students will hate hearing this, but we find it to be absolutely positively true, and that is, you have to be able to write. You absolutely have to develop the skills that enable you to write well. And I don't just mean putting one sentence after another and having it grammatically correct and structured properly. That's obviously part of it. But being able to write, to me, is sort of rooted in the ability to think critically, to comprehend and be able to state clearly what a situation or a problem is, and then to research and develop what an appropriate response is, and then put it on paper in a logical way for the rest of us to learn something from, or to understand what it is that you're communicating. So writing is a number one. And the other thing that I always tell students, and I believe it to be as true for students at 20 years old as it is for myself now, many years later, and that is the value of relationships and networking. Number one, along with writing, of course. But those two things combined really make for a good public relations practitioner. All of the tactics, all of the implementation things that we deal with can be learned, and you can hone those skills. But writing either comes naturally or not to you, and you still have to work at it. And there's no replacement for developing a wide network, cultivating those relationships, and keeping them going over the years. They all come back to you somehow.
We have more PR tips on video at youtube.com/MSUPRSSA.
Go green.